Hey everybody, John Mark here. Welcome to Mark My Words. It is time for the grassroots right wing to shift from only talking about problems to talking about solutions. That's what this video is about today. I've got a clip from another video that I made that I released on my second YouTube channel. If you want to watch that entire video, it's a great video. It's about Donald Trump's Civil War tweet. The link to that is in the description. Make sure you subscribe to my second channel as well. I'm going to play you a clip from that video though, because it outlines something very, very important for the grassroots right wing at this time. And then I'm going to play you some clips from an interview that I did recently with a couple of great gentlemen, Pastor Daniel Johns and Mike. I'm not sure if Mike wants me to share his last name or not, so I'm not going to share it here, but thank you to those two gentlemen. Had a great interview with them recently, and I want you to hear what they had to say and what I had to say on that interview about how we can start moving towards talking about solutions on the grassroots right wing. And myself and Kurt Doolittle and the Propertarian community are going to be inviting you along to come be founding fathers with us, because that is what we need at this time in history in the United States of America. So before we get into it, I just want to say very quickly a huge thank you to my financial supporters. Those of you who support me financially, you mean so much to me. I really appreciate it. And I've noticed that when I share with people verbally how they can help contribute financially, that the contributions go up. And I think that's because a lot of people just don't know that it's possible to support me financially or how to do it. So you can support me at rationalrise.tv by hitting the patrons button. The link is in the description. That is run by people on the winning right, and so that would be my first recommendation for how to support me. It's very similar to how Patreon works, and you can still support me on Patreon as well. The link to that is also in the description. Without further ado, let's get into the clips that I have for you today. Extremely, extremely important. Folks, if we do not do this, if we do not shift towards talking about solutions instead of just talking about problems all the time, we won't have a solution. The good news is we have a solution. We just have to increase the conversation about it and talk about it and spread the word. So I appreciate every single one of you who helps spread the word on these videos. You are making a difference. We are making a huge difference together, and we are starting the conversations about solutions, which is exactly what we need. So without further ado, here are the clips.
This Trump tweet is a marker for the grassroots right wing. In my mind, it marks an official shift that we must take as the grassroots right wing. We must stop only talking about problems, because the grassroots right wing loves to do this. They'll just talk about the problems. They'll talk about the crazy stuff the left is doing, and they'll just talk and talk and talk about that. Folks, what does that accomplish? Well, it accomplishes two things, but there's one thing it doesn't accomplish. The two things it accomplishes is, number one, it keeps people informed about what's going on, and number two, it exposes lies. That is valuable. So I'm not saying to stop doing that completely, but there's one thing that it does not do. It does not provide a solution. Just talking about what our enemy is doing does not provide a solution. The shift we must make is from primarily pointing out what the left is doing to primarily focusing on solutions. And when I say solutions, I'm talking about extremely practical. Kurt Doolittle, the founder of Propertarianism, has a constitution that is almost completed, that is built on the original constitution, but now with 200 more years worth of knowledge and understanding of our enemy's tactics and strategies, we're filling in some of the holes and some of the things that our founding fathers could not have foreseen. He's got a constitution almost completed. You can read it on the propertarianism.com website. And very soon, I'm going to be doing a series of videos with Kurt Doolittle where we're going to go through the Constitution article by article. Because, folks, there's going to be a shakeout in America. That much is certain. Exactly how it will play out, exactly the timing, I don't know. But there will be a shakeout. And broad strokes, 30,000-foot view, our enemy has no chance in that shakeout. Their only chance is if the grassroots right continues to play by the rules. And again, the grassroots right is going to have zero incentive to play by the rules. Because when you can't win any more elections, why the heck would you play by the rules if playing by the rules means being ruled by a coalition of crazy commies and parasitic elites? So there's going to be a shakeout. The grassroots right wing is going to end up ruling over certain areas in the United States of America, if not all of the United States of America. And we have to have something better to put in place that retains the great aspects of what we had before, but fixes some of these holes that our enemies have been driving through, so that our descendants don't have to do this whole thing again and go through this whole garbage again. And we are going to have a discussion about this on my YouTube channel. We're going to go through the Constitution that Kurt is writing, article by article, and we're going to have a modern version of the Federalist Papers, which is some papers that were written by a couple of the founding fathers during the original American Revolutionary period, to lay out their reasoning about this is why we think the new Constitution should be like this, this, and this. We want to have this conversation with the grassroots right wing. We want to start this conversation. So join us. Be a modern founding father with us. Take part in this conversation. We need to shift from just talking about problems to talking about solutions. And we need to shift from just playing defense against the left, which is what the grassroots right wing has been trying to do quite unsuccessfully, just reacting on defense to everything that the left does. They try to do this, we say, oh no, we don't want that. They try to push LGBT, we say, oh no, we don't want that. Well, I guess you LGBT folks can get married. That's okay. Well, what's the inevitable next step? The next thing you know, of course, they want to indoctrinate our kids. Oh no, well, we don't want that. We have been playing defense. We need to have a specific strategy to go on offense against the left and keep up that offense year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation. We need to have an explicit strategy to go on offense against the left and keep it up continually. That explicit strategy is called propertarianism. I'm not going to go into it here. I have other videos about it. Intro to Propertarianism. Welcome to the Winning Right is a good one, where I talk about abandoning the failed strategies that we've tried as grassroots right-wingers, and it gives you a little bit of an introduction to propertarianism and why it's important. And then I also have a video called Reciprocity, the right wing's moral authority. You need to be watching these videos. There is nothing more important that you can invest your time in than learning how to be a modern day founding father, than taking part in this conversation, than having this understanding in your brain, so that you are not a useful idiot, but rather you understand all the failed strategies that we've tried, why they failed, and so that you understand our offensive strategy to take the fight to the left continually and how to do that. You need to understand the basics of these things. There's no better way you can invest your time other than taking care of your family and your loved ones, obviously. So that's what I've got for you today. Always show strength, never show weakness. Realize that we cannot teach or live with the left, and therefore we need to have solutions, and we need to have a specific strategy for going on offense, and we need to implement this after a shakeout, and we need to pass this down to our descendants. We can do it, and we will do it. But job number one for us right now is to make sure the grassroots right wing gets informed about all this. So learn about it yourself and spread it around to everybody you know.
What we're talking about tonight, one of our listeners said it, don't just fix the corrupt mousetrap, that's the old way. And to back that up is the quote I like giving all the time of Richard Buckminster Fuller: you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And then to back that up, this is from Ralph Waldo Emerson: if a man can write a better book, preach a better sermon, or make a better mousetrap than his neighbors, though he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door.
Man, those are powerful quotes, and that's exactly what we're doing. That's what all of us on this call tonight are doing. Everybody that's participating in this is, hey, here's a better mousetrap. It's way better. And your point is great, Mike, because there is a significant gap between where the grassroots right wing is politically and what the grassroots right wing is demanding, and I believe even between that and Trump himself. The politicians, even Trump, are lagging behind where the grassroots right wing is in terms of our demand of what we want. And so that's, in business terms, a market that is ripe for selling to, quote-unquote selling. and reaching with a new and better mousetrap because nobody else is giving them the mousetrap that they want. And we have it. I mean, it's written. I'm reading it right here on the Propertarianism website. It's a better mousetrap. So my goal is to explain it to people and popularize it, and you guys are helping with that. And that's why I say it's going to keep growing because it's filling a huge, huge need in the market.
Yeah. Could you imagine this discussion taking place, but somebody like one of us in a suit and tie standing up behind one of those podiums during one of those Republican debates? Could you imagine? I mean, the people who roared for Trump because he had a pair would faint in the aisles over this stuff. They would. It would be like the Beatles again, landing in New York in '63. It would be, women throwing their panties at the stage. Be like, where do we sign up? Where do we go?
We're approaching a point in our history where having this Constitution and the law of reciprocity here for us to merge with the teachings of identity is like exceptional. I mean, it's just exceptional.
Yeah.
Because they fit hand in glove, and so many people say, well, if this system were to fall down, what are you going to replace it with? Well, now we have a workable program that we can present to them that says, well, right here, we got a brand new Constitution, and we've got a better way of organizing our government to where we don't ever have to deal with this kind of garbage again, any kind of parasitism again.
Yes.
I think that's phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. It is phenomenal, and that's why I'm so grateful for the work Kurt Doolittle has done. And, when you go read it, you realize, okay, this is the way a Constitution needs to be. It needs to be very specific. It needs to be very thorough. It needs to have very accurate definitions. So some of it is obviously kind of dry because he's going through and he's defining his terms, which is necessary because it's a legal document. And so I'm just appreciative that he has done this. But when you get to the parts that the average person is going to be relating to, you start going, yeah, this is great. Because as I was saying before, the grassroots right, as far as I can tell, is pretty much unified around we all want to stop the same things. We all want to stop our enemies from doing certain things that all of us don't like. And it could be summed up in the word parasitism. But you're exactly right. We can't just say we don't want this. We also have to have a system to where we can actually enforce that, and that fixes some of the problems that we have in our current system. And that's what this gives us. I look through it and I say, man, this really, to me, seems like it would work really well. So, yeah, it's a great thing to have.
I have always believed, and, I am a student of constitutional jurisprudence, I've always believed that the biggest gaping hole in our Constitution is that it doesn't define the terms. For example, we the people. If you were going to say, just like any, let's say you signed a mortgage note or what have you, at the beginning of that legal document, it says, for the purposes of this document, the borrower is Michael and the lender is John Mark. Well, then you know specifically for the rest of that legal document what that term means and who it specifically is pointing to. Who's responsible for what? And that is a big gaping hole, in my opinion, with the Constitution. Some people try to say, well, later on in 1789, after the ratification of the Constitution, the first immigration and naturalization law was put into effect. So that should tell you who we the people is. No, you can't have an addendum in a different legal document later. If you're going to establish a nation and say, this is for we the people, well, you damn better say who we the people are. And John Mark, as you have so eloquently pointed out in so many of your works, that this is a racially defined matter. It really, really is. You have proven with the numbers very dispassionately that, hey, if you're a scientist and you want to see the way our nation is going and the way the West in general is going, look at the voting numbers. I have to hand it to you there. So if we're going to have a new Constitution, we better have a definition of terms, or we're going to be going around in circles all over again.
It's so great to hear you say that, Mike, because that's one of the things I run into. One of the most common things I hear, and it's not everybody, but some people say, well, we don't need a new Constitution. We just need to go back to the old one. And so I wouldn't say we need a brand new Constitution, that's just completely disconnected from the first one, obviously. But what you said was so spot on. There were things that they just took for granted. When they said we the people, they would never have dreamed that would include people from like India. It just would never have crossed their mind. But they didn't make it clear because it was 200 years ago and they just had the assumptions of the time. So now we know that our enemy takes advantage of every single little loophole. And obviously there's two parts to the challenge. One is what you're saying, to have everything ultra clear. So we can absolutely do that better. And you just articulated really well what I wish everybody who says that to me, but the original Constitution is fine. I wish everybody could hear what you just said. And so that's the first challenge, is having everything ultra clear. The second challenge is then obviously enforcing it, because we see that our enemies don't even care about the Constitution that we already have either. So that's the two-step challenge. But the first part is, you're exactly right. You have to have your definitions ultra clear. Another one is liberty. You have the right to liberty. Well, what does liberty mean? Do you have the liberty to bring a dildo into a kindergarten classroom or a library and show it off to kindergartners? Is that what you have the liberty to do? What exactly does liberty mean? And so that's where, when we get into the definition of reciprocity, and where Kurt's work is so powerful, in my opinion, is it makes all these things extremely, extremely clear. And there's just no more wiggle room left, or a very tiny little bit of wiggle room. I mean, there'll still be arguments in court, et cetera, but the wiggle room is just dropped down to like a tiny fraction of what it is today. So that's why I really appreciate it, and great point, Mike.
I guess that's a segue into my next question, which would be, what's the plan? Dan and I talk about this all the time.
Yes, great question. What's the plan? In simple terms, we can't just go out there and start causing a ruckus, right? An unorganized ruckus, it can't just be that. There has to be demands. And so what Kurt Doolittle is working on is he's working on a set of demands that will make enough people happy, that will make most people actually happy. I mean, even these leftists, they're very different than us. They actually want to live in these big city, basically ghettos, with very little middle class. And it's basically like rich people, a few rich people, and a huge underclass. That's actually how they want to live. If you let them have a few big coastal cities, for example, and I'm not saying this is the ultimate answer as far as the geographical answer goes, but if you let them have a few big coastal cities and say, you know what, live the way you want to live in these cities. You just can't force it on us. And, of course, we all know what will happen is they will go downhill and they will turn into Brazil 2.0 and worse. But, I mean, it's either that or some kind of a huge, extremely bloody war, which I know some people don't have a problem with, but I think most people would probably want to avoid that if possible. And so if you just separate and let them have that and say, let's rule over the areas where us conservatives already live anyway, which is everywhere outside of the big coastal cities. And just so the audience knows, what I'm picturing in my head here is if you go on Google or your favorite search engine and you look for a 3D map of how people voted geographically in America, what you will see is that leftists, the vast majority of leftists, live in a handful of big coastal cities and Chicago. That's where they all live. And some of them live in the inner cities of some of the interior cities. But if you look at the 3D map, you see that the vast majority of them live in these coastal cities. So that's actually a good thing because our enemy is all crammed into these tiny areas geographically. And so the plan is to have some actual demands so that when we insist on separating, I'll just put it that way, we can put forth a set of demands that will make enough people happy that the current elite power structure will not be able to hold it back. And it will get enough consensus both from the grassroots right, and people will get a lot of what they want. And so the simple concept is we have to have demands. It can't just be like a random, free-for-all. We've got to have demands and say, this is what we're demanding. Give in to these demands, and the pain will stop. And then we have, of course, as we've been talking about, a constitution that we can put in place in a red area or red areas, whatever it ends up being. And so I'm trying to obviously popularize this and get people to know about it so that they know it exists and we can have a conversation. And on my YouTube channel, we're going to be having a conversation going through the Constitution. I'm going to be going through it with Kurt is the plan. And so we can kind of have that conversation like the Founding Fathers had before and say, listen, this is what we're thinking about doing. This is why. Let's have the conversation. Let's be the Founding Fathers together of America 2.0, which carries on the spirit of what America 1.0 was supposed to be.
Right.
And then, of course, the other aspect is timing. We don't know. I don't know the exact timing of when would be the best time to do something like this. I know that we're kind of waiting for the civic nationalists as they keep learning, wow, this multiculturalism thing doesn't work. Even if they come in legally, it doesn't work. They vote majority left. So people are learning that very fast. So it's like, what's the best timing for something like this? But I think that that will present itself as we go along. So that's the 30,000-foot view. We have a chance in America. I mean, America has 60 million-ish, just going by rough Trump voter numbers, grassroots right-wingers with 400 million guns. 2/3 of the military voted Trump. By the way, interesting fact, I didn't know this, but a friend of mine on Facebook who's got some great info pointed out to me, the military is the number one demographic in America as far as being in favor of their state seceding from the Union.
Wow.
That was a very interesting fact.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is our chance, folks. This is what I'm saying. Now is our chance. Very soon the grassroots right wing is not going to be able to win any elections. Even the most dense of grassroots right wingers is going to have it pounded into their brain at some point. You know, if something doesn't happen before then, eventually everybody's going to realize it's because of immigration that we can't win any more elections. We have a chance to teach our people this lesson we've been talking about, that white people of Western European descent are unique as a people. This is the perfect chance to get that into our brain, build it into our law. It's the perfect chance to implement something better, get rid of these bankers, as you're talking about, Mike. And you're exactly right. They were the globalists and the groups of people we were talking about earlier were terrified that if a large, influential, successful nation got rid of this banking scam, that the whole world would want to follow suit because they see the results. And this is where, you know, when we talk about putting forth demands, even leftist grassroots left-wingers will love this. I mean, they don't want to be debt slaves any more than we do. I don't see much understanding on the grassroots left-wingers of this dynamic, but when we fix it for them, they would be thrilled. They're going to be like, I want that. They disagree with us on a bunch of stuff, but heck, everybody that's a regular person is going to love that. I mean, that's very hard to say no to.
How do we really get a constitutional convention going? I'm at the point where, like you, I don't want to wait until Civil War II is happening in the streets to say, hey, we need to meet in Philadelphia and have a constitutional convention. I think it's too late. I think by that point, once shots are fired, then, by the way, a lot of really great resources that I trust say we're already in Civil War, the cold version right now.
Yes.
All of the rhetoric that it's getting passed back and forth in terms of what the consequences are going to be and how certain people are so happy that we're going to be eliminated. It's at the point where your neighbor is shouting over your fence that they're poisoning your well, they've shot your dog, they're going to rape your daughter, and they're going to send dirty pictures to your, Photoshop dirty pictures to your boss to get you fired. I mean, they are telling us exactly what they're going to do, and they're poking us. They're the little kid at the bus stop poking us in the chest, waiting for us to take the first swing so they can demonize us.
Oh, absolutely. And I completely agree that it would be great to have, and this is, as you guys know, I say this on almost all of my videos, we have to have something ready to go. It'd be great to have something ready to go instead of trying to improvise, in the middle of a conflict, right, where it's just a big mess. So a constitutional convention would be a great idea. Now, my first step, I'll just tell you, my first step toward this goal is what I was talking about earlier, where Kurt and I are on my YouTube channel going to go through this Constitution and say, here it is, guys. And so kind of an online version. But it'd be great to have a physical meetup at some point. I don't know. I mean, I know I have 70-some thousand YouTube subscribers, so I don't know how many we could get for a physical meetup, but that would be a fantastic idea, hopefully sooner rather than later as well. But that's step one for me, is to put it out on YouTube, because that gives everybody the ability to look at it and listen to it without having to physically travel. And that's what we want to do. I want to build awareness and say, hey, folks, we're putting this forward. The reaction I'm getting so far is hugely positive. The basic concept, we're all on the same page at the end of the day. And that's what I'm saying. We need to be the new founding fathers. That's what we need to be. I don't have the brain that Kurt has, but he has it. He's written this down. I'm smart enough to read it and understand it at least and say, man, this is great. And spread the awareness. So that's what we're all about.
He's Thomas Jefferson. He probably has more books than Thomas Jefferson did.